In a moment that stunned the studio and quickly reverberated across the nation, Rachel Reeves was delivered a brutal reality check, and not a single word was spoken. As she faltered over her talking points, attempting to strike a chord with Polish voters and tout Labour's economic vision, one British man's silent yet powerful act cut through the spin. It was a raw, unscripted moment that captured the growing sense of national frustration with stark clarity. A quiet gesture, arms folded, expression stern, that seemed to speak on behalf of the entire country. Today proved an unmitigated disaster for the Chancellor in waiting. Reeves had travelled to Rochdale to make a high-profile announcement regarding transport investment. But as she stumbled through policy platitudes, the workers standing behind her looked visibly disheartened, drained, unimpressed, and disconnected. Did you know that over 95% of our viewers aren't subscribed to the channel? We totally get it, life gets busy, and sometimes it's easy to forget. But here's the thing, subscribing is completely free, and it really helps us keep creating the content you enjoy. So, why not hit that subscribe button and join our community? It only takes a second, but it makes a world of difference to us. Thank you for your support. Her economic narrative was riddled with confusion. The single greatest barrier businesses have told me is standing in their, well, quite simply, our plan. The central barrier to growth has been underinvestment. The message was muddled, the delivery faltering. Meanwhile, official figures had just shown the UK as the slowest growing economy in the G7, and young people faced bleak prospects. And then came the moment. As the camera panned, one man's face became an instant symbol. His expression, resolute, unimpressed, weary, mirrored the sentiment of millions watching at home. We are all that man. Rachel Reeves, who had arrived composed and prepared, clutching papers and reciting lines crafted to reassure the public, quickly lost her footing. While Labour loyalists in the front rows nodded politely, a silent tension began to grow behind her. Discomfort simmered, and then boiled over, not with heckles or protest, but with stillness. One man's wordless stare proved devastating. He didn't shout. He didn't jeer. He simply stood there, unmoved, unimpressed, and utterly resolute. But that steely silence conveyed more than any slogan ever could. And Reeves noticed. Her voice wavered. Her eyes darted nervously. Confidence gave way to visible unease. For a shadow chancellor who has spent months rehearsing talking points on stability and growth, this was a crashing collision with public skepticism. The moment ricocheted across social media within minutes. She's done, one user wrote. Another posted, that's the look of someone realizing the public have seen through the illusion. The silence was more than awkward, it was exposing. In that moment, Reeves was stripped of the protective sheen that comes with favorable media headlines and Westminster spin. This wasn't about policy details. It was about public perception, and that perception was damning. Rachel Reeves is not trusted. Not by workers. Not by pensioners. Not by the younger generation battling inflation and stagnating wages. The carefully curated image of economic competence collapsed in front of the cameras. And the timing could hardly have been worse. Just days earlier, Reeves faced fierce criticism over a quiet but deeply controversial proposal to overhaul inheritance tax. Marketed as a policy of fairness, insiders revealed it would siphon billions from ordinary British families over the coming decade, not from the super-rich or offshore elites, but from nurses, teachers, small business owners and pensioners. Critics were withering. She's targeting grieving families while letting real tax avoiders walk free, said one financial analyst. Another branded it the most tone-deaf policy in years. Yet Reeves stood firm, insisting it was about long-term resilience and responsible funding. The problem? Very few believe her anymore. And who can blame them? This is the same Labour Party that promised transformation, yet now sounds eerily similar to the Tories. A party that vowed to champion ordinary people, yet increasingly appears beholden to corporate interests. Under Reeves' economic leadership, Britain doesn't feel like it's heading for recovery, but for further decline. And in that haunting moment on stage, one man's face told the truth more powerfully than any journalist ever could. It was the face of betrayal, of exhaustion, overwork, overtaxation, and being utterly unheard. In that silence, Reeves' narrative shattered. And it didn't end there. Because this week, Labour didn't just endure one humiliation, they suffered two. And the next blow came from one of Britain's most trusted institutions, the armed forces. Stay tuned. Just as the dust was beginning to settle from Rachel Reeves' public relations catastrophe, another political firestorm erupted, this time striking Sir Keir Starmer directly in the heart of his carefully curated image. Former Conservative MP and British Army veteran Bob Seely launched a ferocious public attack on the Labour leader, and there was no mistaking the seriousness of his words. The timing could not have been more devastating. As Starmer posed for photographs dressed in military fatigues, attempting to project the image of a resolute, statesman-like leader, Seely dismantled the performance with surgical precision. "I personally find it offensive," he declared. "The way Keir Starmer dresses up in uniform and tries to act tough." It was a statement that landed with tremendous weight, not because it came from a political opponent looking for a headline, but from a soldier. A man who had served his country, seen combat, and earned his uniform in blood and duty. What Seely saw in Starmer was not leadership. It was a pantomime. And he did not stop there. "This is a man," Seely continued, "who spent his legal and political career defending terrorists and those who wished this country harm." The allegation sent shockwaves through Westminster. Journalists scrambled for context. Labour's press office refused to comment. But the damage was done. Seely had pulled back the curtain on what a growing number of Britons had begun to suspect. Starmer's patriotic rebranding was a facade, a costume donned for votes, not conviction. And in an age of economic volatility, geopolitical tension, and cultural unrest, Seely warned that such inauthentic leadership is not just hollow, it is dangerous. His anger wasn't limited to optics. It stemmed from what he viewed as a profound betrayal of policy. He accused the Labour government of preparing to squander £9 billion on the Chagos Islands Agreement, a move he described as disastrously stupid. While British pensioners rationed their heating and children study in collapsing school buildings, Starmer's administration appeared poised to hand over billions to Mauritius in what critics are calling a self-inflicted act of diplomatic masochism. "We don't have to give it away," Seely fumed. "We could simply say, actually, we're keeping it." That single remark laid bare the priorities of a government seemingly more interested in performative globalism than in national security or domestic infrastructure. And the revelations kept coming. Seely exposed that Defence Secretary John Healey couldn't even provide a cost estimate for Britain's latest submarine program, codenamed Orca. "It's pretty pathetic," Seely said bluntly. "And if he doesn't even know, it's no wonder Rachel Reeves and Lucy Powell sound so much worse." The implication was brutal and accurate. Labour's front bench, Seely suggested, was not merely inexperienced. They were dangerously uninformed. Hollowed out. Dressed up in borrowed authority, parroting confidence while lacking the weight of real understanding. And that lack of understanding, in positions of such power, could prove catastrophic. The scandals converged: Reeves' stage humiliation, the inheritance tax backlash, and Starmer's military cosplay, torn apart by veterans. The image of a unified, government-in-waiting Labour Party dissolved before the public's eyes. In its place stood a tableau of confusion, betrayal, and amateurism. A shadow chancellor mocked by her own audience. A prime minister in waiting scorned by those who had served. A party clinging to buzzwords while the nation drowns in real-world crises. The illusion of readiness and competence collapsed in one devastating week, and voters noticed. Across Britain, the mood shifted. The patience snapped. People grew weary of slick speeches and media-friendly platitudes. Of promises about growth and reform from politicians who appeared more polished than principled, more trained than trusted. Rachel Reeves spoke of stability, but could not maintain her own composure in the face of a single man's silent protest. Keir Starmer posed in camouflage, but could not withstand the verbal assault of a single veteran's truth. And if this is the face of modern leadership, the question is no longer if a public backlash is coming, but when. Yet just as Labour tried to contain the damage, a final blow emerged, not from a headline, but from the fine print of Reeves' own speech. While the cameras rolled and media outlets focused on her faltering delivery, few noticed the economic policy detail that slipped quietly into the background: a devastating inheritance tax proposal now dubbed the final straw for millions of ordinary Britons. Behind the political theatre and bureaucratic jargon lay a stark truth. Under Reeves' new framework, working and middle-class families, those who had scrimped and saved to leave something behind, now faced inheritance tax bills in the tens, even hundreds, of thousands of pounds. We're not talking about oligarchs or offshore moguls. These are families with modest homes, local businesses, savings accounts built on decades of sacrifice. All now being told, under the guise of fairness, that their legacy must be redistributed. Translation: confiscated. For years, inheritance tax was regarded as a political third rail, so unpopular that even the most left-leaning governments dared not touch it. But now, emboldened by her status as Labour's economic spearhead, Reeves is charging straight into that minefield. And the results are already explosive. Financial experts estimate the new policy could generate between £5 and £6 billion annually, not from corporations, but from ordinary people. From widows. From retirees. From parents who skipped holidays and pinched pennies to give their children a better life. And now all of that is at risk. The betrayal is staggering. Reeves portrays herself as a model of fiscal prudence, the grown-up in the room. But what she is really offering is a rebranded version of the same tired class warfare, reverse Robin Hood, taxing the responsible to cover for political failure. One commentator put it simply: Rachel Reeves isn't the Chancellor of the people. She's the accountant of decline, balancing the books on the backs of the grieving. And across Britain, that sentiment is spreading fast. Even within Labour's traditional heartlands, fury is erupting. On social media, lifelong supporters are now openly questioning whether the party has crossed a line from which it cannot return. "I voted Labour for 40 years, one man wrote. But this is a betrayal I can't forgive. My father worked himself into the grave to leave us something. Now Reeves wants to take it away, with a smile and a spreadsheet." Another added bitterly, "I used to believe Labour stood for families like mine. Turns out they just want what little we've managed to save." The anger is not ideological. It is visceral. Personal. Because this isn't about abstract numbers on a government balance sheet, it's about loss. About legacy. About the final thread tying generations together being quietly snipped by a government that promised better. And Rachel Reeves knows it. That's why this policy was not placed front and center in her speech. That's why it wasn't promoted in flashy press releases or tweeted out with hashtags and slick slogans. It was buried. Tucked between paragraphs. Disguised in dry economic jargon and hidden in plain sight. A stealth attack on Britain's soul. But the public is waking up, and they are not taking it quietly. What's worse is that the policy's very justification is beginning to fall apart. Economists are warning that the inheritance tax hike may not even raise the revenue Labour is touting. Why? Because the truly wealthy, the global elite whom Reeves claims she's targeting, have the legal infrastructure, financial advisors, and offshore accounts to shield their assets. It's not billionaires who will suffer. It's the average British homeowner. The family-run shop. The couple who bought a modest home in the 1980s and watched its value rise through no fault or intention of their own. People who simply lived, who built a life. And now, they are being told they are too successful. Too fortunate. And must pay more. It's an insult disguised as justice. And just when Labour thought it could weather the storm, the media began doing exactly what Rachel Reeves had hoped they wouldn't, digging. Journalists uncovered internal memos showing that Reeves' own advisors had raised red flags months ago. One leaked document warned that the policy would be seen as a war on aspiration. Another bluntly stated, "We must be careful not to alienate Middle England." Those warnings were ignored. Why? Because Reeves and Starmer are no longer driven by prudence, but by control. Driven to find new revenue streams to plug the gaping holes in Labour's budget pledges, no matter who gets crushed in the process. But it isn't just this single tax policy that has sparked outrage. It's the pattern, a steady stream of stealth reversals and quiet betrayals. First, it was the slow U-turn on abolishing tuition fees. Then came the abandonment of pledges to renationalise rail and utilities. Then, the quiet retreat from the Green Investment Plan. And now, inheritance tax. Every month, Labour unveils another climb down. Another betrayal. Another promise broken, each dressed in the comforting language of pragmatism and realism. Behind every one is the same cynical calculation: they'll forget by the time we're in power. But this time, they may have miscalculated, badly. Because this isn't just policy. This is personal. And it cuts deep into the wider trust crisis now engulfing the Labour Party. When voters look at Rachel Reeves, many no longer see a reformer. They see a technocrat, someone with no real emotional connection to the people whose futures she's restructuring on paper. And when they look at Keir Starmer, they no longer see a potential statesman. They see a man hiding behind focus groups and photo ops, clinging to a Union Jack as camouflage for his past positions. A man hoping no one remembers who he used to be. But Britain remembers. The veterans remember. The families remember. The man who sat silently in the front row of Reeves' speech, arms folded, eyes locked, wordless but resolute, he remembers. And now, the mask is slipping. Fast. What began as an awkward, stage-managed economic speech has ignited a national reckoning. Britons are now asking the questions Labour feared most. Who really pays under Labour? Who really benefits? And why does it always feel like those who follow the rules are the ones left behind? In just one disastrous week, Labour has managed to alienate its base, anger military veterans, alarm small business owners, and reignite the inheritance tax war, all while claiming to be the party of stability. But if this is stability, what does chaos look like? Labour is no longer walking a political tightrope. It has fallen, and beneath it is no safety net. Only a furious electorate, sharpening both their memories and their votes. The storm that began with a single, silent protest has now swelled into a tidal wave. Rachel Reeves may have filled that conference hall with words about growth and economic discipline. But across Britain, what truly resonated was a man's silence, unrehearsed, raw, and honest. It captured the mood of a country that feels abandoned. Betrayed. That silence said more than any soundbite ever could. This isn't just a political backlash. It is a reckoning. And it has only just begun.